So last month, my wife, Lori, and I got to spend a few days in Toronto. And we explored neighborhoods, we walked a ton, we ate some great food. And in one neighborhood, as we often do, we stopped in a bookstore to wander through the aisles. And as I usually do, I headed first for the politics section. I was sad, though honestly not particularly surprised, to see a decently robust selection of books devoted entirely to decrying the perceived evils of Israel, accusing it of crimes past and present, how it is the root of so much death, so much loss of opportunity for Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, and in Israel. Titles included all the very triggering words: genocide, conspiracy, and on and on. Needless to say, there was no startup nation. Then, as I also often usually do, I went to the religion section to see what Jewish books were on sale. And here I was completely surprised. Titles used phrases like why Judaism is inherently racist, why our religion justifies evil, and more. Now, I'm not so naive of how Israel is viewed politically in the world, and I certainly have my own robust criticisms of Israel's current leadership. But I was surprised to find an anti-Semitic Jewish bookshelf. So I pondered what to do. Do I say something to the bored and likely powerless young staff person? Do I start shouting in the aisles about the difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism to anybody who might listen? Do I just walk away? And instead, in a spark what I believe was brilliant passive aggressivism, I picked up a large coffee table book on Buddhism and I put it right in front of all of the Jewish books on the bookshelf. My small act of bookstore vigilantism was certainly not impactful. But at the same time, what else could I do? What else would I have even wanted to do? And this experience captures for me how I'm feeling today about so many issues. Pick your poison: challenges to US democracy, decimation of civil rights, overt and growing anti-Semitism, one of the many issues happening in and to Israel, leadership voice, interpersonal antagonism, and on and on and on and on. I am someone who often feels inspired to stand up, to fight, to protest, to respond to moments when, as our ancestors did, when God called upon them to act heroically. Hineni, here I am, ready to commit my energies to make this a better world. And at the same time, I'm just feeling tired and beaten down. The world feels so overwhelming, and just going through the basics of a day feels so hard, let alone extending myself to challenge social ills. And I don't even have a new job, a new house, a new baby, and lose my voice. As I was wrestling with this exhaustion, I recall the Midrash, interpreted and taught me by one of my favorite rabbis, Rabbi Dani Siegel, about a conversation between God and Yam Suf, the Red Sea. After the sea has split open, all the Israelites have gone through, the sea is returned to its steady state, all the Egyptians are drowned. And Yam Suf says to God, that was amazing. Such a cool opportunity for me to save these people. I'm ready for the next miracle. What's next? And God replies, that's it. There's no next miracle. You did a great job splitting the sea when you needed to, but now your job is just to be the sea. Hold up the boats. Let the fish swim through you. Just be a sea. Now, Rav Dani first shared his interpretation of this midrash with Israeli reservists returning home from fighting in Gaza, struggling with now seeming mundane tasks of doing the laundry and going to work, making sure their children were in the right place, self-care. We are living in extraordinary times, which often spark an innate desire to be extraordinary, splitting the sea, being the hero, being part of a change larger than yourself. These are arguably the demands and the opportunities of this moment. And it might be easy for me to give a somewhat simplistic sermon today about being engaged in that fight. I deeply believe that the United States in Israel's democracy and moral character are at a great risk right now. In many ways, this is our moment. The time to be on the right side of history, to do the hard work of building stronger and more ethical civil societies. But particularly for those of us who have been doing pieces of this work for years, it can be exhausting to always be the advocate, always be at the rally, always write the letter, always be on the lookout for nasty anti-Semitic literature in the religion section of a Toronto bookstore. There is something comforting about God's invitation to just be the sea. And there's a deeper layer to this fatigue, one illuminated to me by Rabbi Avi Killip in her interpretation of this midrash about the sea. Just being the sea is also exhausting. The boats are heavy. Sustaining marine life and plants and maintaining the regularity of the tides on a strict schedule, making sure you look beautiful. It is certainly work to be a hero and be a sea that splits, but is also heroic to just take care of the basics. Laundry, going to work, making sure our children are in the right place, doing self-care. My dilemma then is to know when to push through to try to improve the world, making sure I also value the real work required to take care of the basics of life, all while navigating just how exhausting the whole thing can feel. I have a very dear friend, and she had a very tough July. She navigated a harsh illness in her family, the sudden death of a beloved pet, all while raising 3 children, going through their own intense physical and mental health journeys, and running a significant nonprofit organization. And it just became too much. And as she told me, I just need my world to be a bit smaller. So she pulled in. She talked to fewer people. She took an extended time away from work. She immersed herself in nature. She gave herself permission to shrink her life to a manageable size. Now, that doesn't mean she ignored the world. It just meant that she simplified the wide breadth of issues and people and noise coming at her every day. She focused inside the beam of headlights on a dark curving road at night. She gave herself permission to just be the sea. In considering this question of simplicity and focus in the face of an overwhelming world, Rabbi Jacob pointed me to the stories of Isaac after the Akedah, after he is bound, which we read about today. At this moment, you might imagine a traumatized Isaac, an angry Isaac, a sorrowful Isaac. Instead, what does he do? He digs wells. He digs lots of wells, new wells, old wells, even the old stopped up well of his father, who had just tried to sacrifice him. I imagine him rebuilding his life through the physical act of just digging. He takes all the emotions of almost being sacrificed by his father and shrinks his world to one job, digging wells. This past spring, I did a version of shrinking my world during a 5-day silent Jewish meditation retreat. Yes, Jewish and silent. 5 days. Other than morning davening, we basically didn't talk. We made no eye contact, no phones, no reading, no writing. The vast majority of hours, we just sat in silence with our eyes closed, breathing and meditating, interspersed with some yoga and hearing Divrei Torah. And yes, for those who know me, and despite the predictions of my children, I succeeded, I did it. 5 days, no talking. I found in this forced inward focus that slowly, day by day, I was able to calm my very distracted mind. In not really engaging with humans, just with God and with myself, I found surprising words and ideas. I found anger and joy and gratitude. I found completely new layers to my very complicated and confusing relationship with God and with theism. It reignited in me a connection between God and prayer that I've been honestly seeking for years. Simplifying my world enabled something else to emerge. Just like my friend who, in making her world smaller, found greater strength and groundedness I emerge from meditation more connected as a Jew, more sensitive to my own emotional reactions, and more emboldened to engage in the work of social change. Sometimes we need to give ourselves permission to shrink our world, finding something new in the quiet. Even my best, though, addressing the issues of this moment still feels a bit overwhelming. Who am I? With whatever limited time and capacity and money I have to make a difference. Even those of us privileged enough to have professional opportunities in social change face this question about whether anything we do actually makes a difference. And at this point, I'm drawn, but honestly not very fulfilled, to platitudes like the idealistic child who saves one starfish amongst all the others who will die, and Margaret Mead encouraging me to think globally and act locally. These ideas seem trite and a bit self-affirming without actually helping me not feel overwhelmed, the point of withdrawal and immobility. When I was discussing this topic with my family, one of our kids shared something that I found very wise. They said, "We don't have to do everything, Dad. We just have to go one step beyond that which is easy." The same way an exercise class instructor pushes us to work just harder than what we think we can accomplish, going one step beyond is one lens through which we could evaluate our impact. I learned another lens from Rabbi Sarah Hurwitz, the very first female Orthodox rabbi in this country. Rabbi Sarah now runs Yeshivat Maharat, which is a rabbinic seminary for Orthodox women. And she has fought so much to achieve and change the reality for Orthodox women. And I asked Rabbi Sarah, how do you know when to fight? And how do you know when it's not worth it? How do you keep pushing forward? And she said something. She said it takes courage to say yes to the opportunity for social change, but it also takes courage to say no. That's part of being a hero. You have to trust that you are not alone. You have to trust that other people are going to say yes, even when you can't and you need to say no. We don't have to do it all. We don't have to split the entire sea. We just have to make some ripples, maybe even a wave. I was confronted starkly with these options during a trip to Israel earlier this month. And 2 Shabbats ago, I found myself in a shul in Jerusalem. It's this incredibly warm, lay-led community, meets in a gymnasium. It also happens to be the community of John Poland and Rachel Goldberg Poland. And you may recall those names as the parents of Hirsch, the hostage who became so famous in part because of Rachel and John's relentless work to raise his profile to international figures, to the Pope, the president, at the DNC convention, and communities around the world. Rachel and John, kind, quiet, unassuming parents who stood up and made the world take notice, who became heroes, who split an entire sea. And I choked up seeing John as he chanted, Achenu, that mournful prayer for the Hatufim that we say for hostages' safety and release. John, who previously was content to just be a sea split wide open with power and commitment when he needed to, now back that his son is dead, to mostly just being a sea, and yet still hoping to make some waves with his prayers. And maybe that's the answer. When the world calls on us to be heroic, to be on the right side of history, to take a stand, we do it. We have to do it. Most of the time, we get to just take care of ourselves and our immediate responsibilities, being stable as a sea. And we always push ourselves to do that one extra thing, one extra step beyond comfort, with a piercing shofar blast each year as a reminder to not become complacent. I've had the gift of meeting Rachel and John on a few occasions, and they often talk about just doing what they needed to do, and that every parent would do the same thing if we were in their position. And I'm not so sure, and thank God I don't know their pain. But I see this moment as challenging and exhausting time when people who do have the skills and the privilege and the capacity may need to find a little extra strength to step up. This is a different kind of strength than what we might have needed in the past. It's not a strength of taking on the whole world, but a strength of right-sizing our worlds. It's not a strength of blazing forward, but a strength that comes from hearing the small in the quiet moments. It's not necessarily a strength of stability, but a strength of gradually moving forward. And it's not only a strength of heroically saving an entire people, but also a strength of sustaining life as it ebbs and flows. The Talmud describes a debate about what it means to be strong. Is it better to be like a cedar, stout, robust, or like a reed, flexible and moving? And while we might assume the conclusion that it is better to be strong like a cedar, the Talmud concludes that it's actually better to be like a reed that is small but rebounds when it is blown, instead of a cedar, which, when particularly violent storms strike, has weak root structures and falls over. A reed growing out of shallow water, making small waves as it moves in the wind. That is the strength I hope for as we find ways to simultaneously care for ourselves, be who the world needs us to be, and make whatever ripples and waves and even heroic splits that we can. Shana Tova.